看着，哇塞！
Imagine waking up in your village, hearing children laughing, mothers cooking, and farmers preparing for the day, only to watch the ground beneath you crack open and erase everything within minutes. Across the world, entire communities have been swallowed alive by landslides. And what makes these disasters even more heartbreaking is not just the force of nature, but the failures of humans. Governments ignoring warnings, scientists silenced, and entire villages forgotten after the mud settled. Tonight, we dive into the untold stories of 5 villages that were swallowed by the earth, and why their pain still matters. One, Saint John, Vianney, Canada, 1971. In 1971, the quiet Canadian town of Saint John, Vianney sat on unstable clay soil. For years, experts had warned the area was dangerous, but people were never evacuated because officials believed the risk was too small. Then came the rains. On May 4th, the ground split open, creating a landslide so massive it devoured 41 homes in one night. Families were buried alive as their houses were dragged into a dark pit. 31 people died, not because they weren't warned, but because warnings weren't taken seriously. What makes this disaster so controversial is that it wasn't just nature, it was negligence. To this day, survivors say the government treated their tragedy as an inconvenience, erasing the town from maps and moving on. Saint Jean Vianney remains a haunting example of what happens when authorities ignore science. Two, Bagarkap, Nepal, 1995. Nestled in the Himalayas, Bagarkap was a peaceful village where locals and trekkers shared stories under the mountain skies. But in 1995, heavy rains loosened the slopes above, triggering a landslide that buried 80% of the village in minutes. Dozens of people were killed, including children and visiting trekkers. Survivors described it as if the entire mountain came alive, roaring down in a wave of rock and soil. Here's the most painful part. Bagarkap was considered a safe stop for trekkers, and there had been no early warning system in place. In fact, the event exposed how little Nepal's mountain communities were protected, despite being some of the most vulnerable in the world. For the families left behind, it was not just a natural disaster. It was proof that their lives had never been prioritized. Three, Koslanda, Sri Lanka, 2014. Koslanda was a tea plantation community where hundreds of poor families lived in housing provided by plantation companies. For years, experts warned that the unstable hillsides could collapse during heavy rains. Even the government had issued warnings, but nothing was done. On October 29, 2014, after days of monsoon rains, the hill gave way. A wall of mud, nearly 3 kilometers long, tore through the village, crushing 150 houses. At least 16 people were confirmed dead, but nearly 200 more were missing, presumed buried forever. The most controversial part? Survivors say they begged for relocation years earlier, but were ignored because they were just plantation workers. Their deaths were not just caused by mud. They were caused by a society that saw them as replaceable. 4. Jerobala, Afghanistan. 2015. Afghanistan is no stranger to tragedy. But in 2015, a remote village called Jerobala was erased in silence. After days of rain, the mountainside collapsed, wiping away 95 homes and killing 52 people instantly. The saddest part? Rescue efforts barely existed. Survivors claimed they were left to dig with their bare hands, pulling out bodies while waiting for help that never came. The world was busy watching other headlines, and this village simply disappeared from news cycles. This landslide wasn't just a disaster, it was a statement about which lives the world chooses to care about, and which it doesn't. 5. Yambali, Papua New Guinea, 2024. And then, the most recent, and perhaps the most horrifying, landslide in modern memory, Yambali. In May 2024, a giant wave of soil and rock crashed down on Yambali and 5 neighboring villages in Papua New Guinea. Entire families were buried in their sleep. Rescue workers reported digging through layers of earth, only to find lifeless bodies locked in the positions they had died in. The government estimated 2,000 people were trapped under the soil, making it one of the deadliest landslides in recorded history. And yet, international aid was painfully slow. Many survivors said they felt abandoned, screaming into the night with no help coming. The tragedy of Yambali isn't just about a landslide, it's about a forgotten people fighting to be seen by a world that barely looked their way. These villages, Saint John Vianney, Bagarkap, Koslanda, Jerobala, and Yambali, were not just names on a map. They were homes. They were schools. They were families laughing one moment and gone the next. And the truth is, most of these deaths were preventable. Warnings ignored, communities neglected, lives treated as if they didn't matter. But remembering them does matter. Sharing their stories ensures they are not erased like the land that swallowed them. So now I ask you, which of these tragedies shocked you the most? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you believe stories like these should never be forgotten, don't just watch. Subscribe to our channel, hit the bell icon, and join us as we uncover more hidden disasters that the world tried to bury. Because sometimes, the ground doesn't just swallow villages, it swallows the truth.